When you hear the word hacker, what pops into your head? Probably some person in a dark room, right? But is that really the whole picture? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the entire spectrum of hacking, from the people who build our digital world to the ones who try to tear it all down.
So, that brings us to the big question. Is a hacker a criminal or a pioneer? Well, the thing is, the answer is kind of both. And figuring out that difference is absolutely crucial in our world today. It's really the difference between the person who designs a lock and the person who learns how to pick it.
You know, the word hacker hasn't always meant what we think it means. Back in the 60s, these folks were seen as these brilliant, creative innovators, just pushing the absolute limits of technology. But then, as computers started showing up in our homes and our offices, storing all of our valuable info, the term started to get a much darker reputation, which led to the really complex world we live in today.
So at its core, what is hacking? Well, it's really just about manipulating a system to do something it wasn't originally designed to do. The act itself? It's neutral. It's the why, the motivation behind it, that decides whether it's for good or for bad.
Okay, so to really get a handle on all these different motivations, we can actually categorize hackers by the hats they wear. It's a simple analogy, but it's a super powerful way to understand their intentions and, whether they're working in the light, in the shadows, or somewhere in that gray area in between.
This table pretty much lays out the whole landscape for us. On one side, you've got your white hats. They're the good guys, the ethical defenders who are hired to find security flaws and do everything by the book. On the complete opposite end, you've got the black hats, the cyber criminals, pure and simple. And then, floating right in the middle, are the gray hats. These guys might expose a security flaw without getting permission first. Sometimes they think they're doing it for the greater good, but they're still breaking the law to get it done.
All right, let's start with the heroes of our story, the white hat hackers. These folks are security professionals. Companies literally pay them good money to try and break into their own systems. And you might ask, why would they do that? Well, it's to find all the weak spots and patch them up before the bad guys can get in. They are an absolutely critical line of defense. And here we have the villains. Black hat hackers are the ones you're always hearing about on the news after some massive data breach. Their motivations are all bad. They're stealing your data, demanding ransom, committing fraud, or sometimes just causing chaos for the fun of it. What they do is always illegal and can be incredibly destructive.
But the spectrum doesn't just stop there. You've also got folks called script kiddies. They're usually less skilled and just use hacking tools that other people built. And then there are hacktivists who use hacking to make a political or social point. It just goes to show you how varied and complex this whole world really is.
Okay, so now that we know who the bad guys are, how are they doing it? Let's take a peek inside the cybercriminals toolkit and understand the kind of threats we're all up against.
This list here is like a greatest hits of cyber attacks. You've probably heard of phishing and malware. Some of the others are a bit more technical, like an SQL injection. Think of it like using a secret code word to trick a website's database into just spilling all its secrets. Or a man-in-the-middle attack, which is where a hacker sneakily puts themselves between you and a website, listening to everything.
Let's break down phishing for a second, because it's one of the most common and, honestly, one of the most effective attacks out there. So an attacker sends you an email that looks totally legit, maybe from your bank. You click a link, you land on a fake website that looks real, you type in your login info, and boom. Just like that, they've got your password. It's so good that something like 80% of all reported security breaches start with a phishing attack.
And this gets to a really important point. So many of these attacks, phishing included, are a form of what's called social engineering. And that's what makes them so dangerous. It doesn't matter how strong your password is or how great your firewall is, if an attacker can just trick a person into handing over the keys. They're not hacking the computer, they're hacking the human.
But for every attack, there has to be a defense, right? And this is where our heroes, the ethical hackers, come back into the picture. They are the force that's fighting back, using the attacker's own tools and techniques against them.
Now check out this number, because it really puts the challenge we're facing into perspective. 3.5 million. That's the estimated number of unfilled cybersecurity jobs around the world. That is a massive gap in our defenses, and it makes the work that ethical hackers are doing more important than ever.
So what does an ethical hacker actually do all day? Well, their whole job is to think like an attacker. They proactively hunt for weaknesses, they test new software for security holes before it's released, and they help create the fixes that keep us all safe online. At the end of the day, they are the guardians of our most sensitive data.
But look, being a great ethical hacker isn't just about being a technical genius. It's all governed by a super strict code of conduct. It takes incredible integrity, a deep understanding of the law, and a huge sense of responsibility for the data you're protecting. This pretty much says it all, right? The technical skills that a white hat uses and a black hat uses, they can be exactly the same. The only thing separating a hero from a villain in this story is their ethics, whether they have permission and that responsibility that comes with having such powerful knowledge. So understanding this whole spectrum, from the criminal to the defender, that's your first and maybe your strongest line of defense. The threats out there are very real, but so are the people fighting back. Now that you have this knowledge, how are you going to use it to strengthen your own shield?